I want you to meet someone very special to me. She wrote this, and she's about to become the main star of a musical. Her name is Calanthe.
Over hills and meadows extinguishing the
But before we begin, my name is Albert, and you could say that I like fantasy, especially anything made by Tolkien. I like writing. In fact, I've been writing the same fantasy world for over 12 years. I also like painting, especially if it's about the stories that I write, like this one of a very good girl called Varga. I also published a book called Las Lágrimas de Nerakhis, Tears of Nerakhis in English. And with a group of friends, we're turning that book into a fully sung-through musical. And at the center of it all is one single character, Calanthe. Now, I want you to meet Calanthe, but I kind of had a problem. There's not really one Calanthe. You see, I've been writing her for 5 years, and in that time, she's just changed. In a way, she has grown up. So today I want to show you 5 different Calanthes, one for every year, tell you who they are and how they've changed me. So let's begin. So the year is 2021 and I just got COVID. So I'm stuck in my room for a week. I don't really care about that because I'm in the middle of writing the Tears of Nerakhis, but sometimes I would get stuck being there all day and I wouldn't be able to continue writing. So I decided to make a few drawings of the story. I just read El Quixote with illustrations from Gustave Doré. I kind of had that black and white style of illustrations etched in my mind a little bit, so I went for that style. I like looking at them because they remind me of what first made me feel like I had to tell this story. None of them are about castles or structures or any of the other things that appear in the story. They're all about nature. Nature plays a very important part in my life. I've always worried a lot about how we interact with it. It feels so many times that we're just the plague that invades and destroys and disrupts this perfect harmony and order. And I think that's where Calanthe comes from. She hates her world, she hates humans, she hates men especially. And so when she gets trapped in a forced marriage with a really evil prince, she, well, escapes. And that was kind of me too. I had that same feeling to want to leave. I mean, it's very easy to see nature as this perfect place that's all free from the imperfections and all the problems of our society. But the more that I kept writing and the more that she kept going on her adventures, we both discovered that it's not that simple. So, after fleeing, Calanthe gets stuck in the castle of the god of the night, Nerakhis. But we'll talk about him later. This is where Calanthe is the happiest. This is where she falls in love with Alea, the daughter of Nerakhis. This is where she writes her best poetry, and this is where she feels the most. There's one character in history or literature that has had more of an influence in the personality and the character of Calanthe than anyone else, and that is Sappho. Sappho is this Greek poet that lived in the island of Lesbos and wrote poems about mainly love. And I think that all the love that makes us human is encompassed in her poems, which are very short, very ancient, so we only have little fragments of them. But that was what I wanted the book to portray about Calanthe, just little fragments of the love that was felt by someone long ago, connecting humans of different worlds together. And I also really liked 19th century depictions of that time period, you know, Leon and Waterhouse, because these paintings bring to life not necessarily the world of Sappho, but the world of the poems of Sappho. I painted this a year after finishing the book or so. I was starting a new career. Everything in my life kind of felt rushed, a bit chaotic. And I went home for a few days. I went to Barcelona. And I just had this really strong feeling that I wanted to go back to those gardens. I wanted to go back to the gardens of Nerakhis, where I had also been so happy while I had been writing them. And I went back. So let's cut to a few years later. Calanthe's story is finished. I finished writing it, and now I have to let her go. I have to let her go to the book cover artist, to the illustrator, to the publisher. Each of them is going to have their own Calanthe. Each of them is going to make a new Calanthe, and each audience member, each reader is going to make their own Calanthe as well. I have to learn to let go, but I'm just not good at letting go. And so I decided to design the cover as well. But how do you tell the whole story in one picture? Well, for that we need to talk about Alea. Calanthe herself begins the book by saying that this is not her story, that this is the story of Alea. Calanthe is like us. She's an spectator that's just lucky enough to get to meet the princess of nature, to get to love her, to get to kiss her. I tried over 100 designs for the cover. I was putting the two lovers together with the shadow of Nerakhis on top, but something just didn't feel right. And it didn't feel right because Calanthe and Alea, despite being lovers, are not equals. They're different. Alea is a goddess. Calanthe doesn't just love Alea. Calanthe adores Alea. That's when I had the idea to take Alea's face and make it bigger. And that's when suddenly all of these covers started to make a lot more sense, because the relationship between Calanthe and Alea was adequately portrayed. Because at the end of the day, Alea is a goddess, but Calanthe is human, just like us. See that color over there? Oh, maybe orange. Some people call it burnt orange or amber or burnt sienna. I call it Calanthe orange. Let me introduce you to my two favorite colors. This is Prussian blue. And this is, well, it had another name, but I call it Calanthe orange. These colors just happen to be complementary. That means that in a color wheel, this color is in the exact opposite place in terms of hue as this color. And that's something that I started thinking a lot about, because this is literally the color that I always would use for the night. You know, Prussian blue, you know, it has these deep, interesting blues. And then this is the color that I would be using for literally the setting sun. The fact that these two guys are complementary and are representing two things that in my world are literally two different entities was something that I wanted to kind of explore. You know, the world of Nerakhis is full of blue colors. It's full of cold colors because there's no sun in the world of Nerakhis. Nerakhis is the god of the night, so everything in his world is just blues, some pale pink for Alea, but it's all colors that are very cool. And then on the other side we have the world of men, which is all gold and, you know, the sun and armor and metal and all that kind of stuff. So it's all about just bright gold, right? And then suddenly I thought about the dress that I had put Calanthe in the painting when I was getting inspired by Leydon. And I was like, well, that's her dress. That's her color all along, because she's an outsider in the world of Nerakhis. She's a human, so she's a creature of gold. She's a creature of that kind of like setting sun color. That color that we ended up calling, where is it? Calanthe orange. She brings that color into a world that has no sun. So we started getting these kind of like very interesting designs with like this color that is kind of like a middle point between orange and yellow. It's not fully orange in like the way that you think like of an orange, but it's also not yellow. It's setting sun. It's setting sun color. So we see here the full wheel of colors and how they both like work so well, because we have light and warm, dark and warm, dark and cold, and light and cold. So you have the world of Nerakhis here, Parga, who's like a wolf that's the Alea's protector, basically, and she's kind of like the lieutenant of Nerakhis. Then we have the Deer King here, who sides with Calanthe. So we have these four characters, and they're four being complemented with this really nice palette of color. And we have the clears here, and we have the darks here, and we have cold and warm. This is the color wheel of the Tears of Nerakhis. This is my color wheel, and then obviously we have the amazing dress of Calanthe here. And I want to show you just one last painting of Calanthe here that has the same color palette. So we have her orange with that kind of like light pink, and then the dark but still warm color of the deer. But I have this thing of this poster, which you've probably seen if you've seen any student dorm or anything like that. It's a pretty famous poster, and you know, I was always kind of looking at it, and then one day I saw that it has exactly the same combination we have, right? It has orange and pink, and then a dark color to complement. And so if it was working here, like, you know, why can't we make it work? So yes, my inspirations are basically Frederick Layton and a Hawaii poster. But this poster felt very scary, and it was kind of really hard to do because, you know, when you make a painting or drawing, you always have that kind of thing of like, you know, if it doesn't work, you make another one, and it's kind of freeing. It makes you be able to experiment a lot more. When I was making, for instance, these costume sketches, it's like, if, you know, some of these pages didn't work. There were paintings that were horrible of certain characters, and they just scraped them and threw them away. But when you make a poster, you spend so much time doing it, and especially has that thing of like, you don't know where it's gonna be, but it's gonna end up somewhere, and it's going to be seen by a lot of people, and especially it's gonna be the first thing that a lot of people see. It has to be simple, you know, you have to have like clear shapes and not too much detail, but then, you know, you have to have a lot of details in because you need to show a lot of the intricacies of the story and everything like that. So yeah, it was hard, and you know, it went through many phases, and different sketches, and I made each of the parts separately in different documents and everything before I had the final version. I really went with the Art Nouveau inspiration. I think Art Nouveau is amazing. I think Art Nouveau especially belongs in fantasy. It's such a powerful, such a whimsical art form that plays with the nature, plays with natural forms, plays with curves in a way that I think just fits fantasy very much, and it fits our story very well as well. So for instance, you can see here that you have this very stylized hair. Stylized hair is an example, or the shadows that are a little bit less naturalized, and you have these kind of like clear differences between the different shadows. The Calanthe orange keeps being the protagonist here. You have this beautiful color that I'm still just kind of like really interested in, that takes center stage, and then what's the other color that takes the other half of the space? Prussian blue. I feel ready for Calanthe to take her next step, which is become part of someone else and become a character in the minds of all these people. I've been struggling with it for a long time, I think, because I was unable to kind of like lose that relationship with her, which sounds a bit weird, but I think that anyone here that's a writer will appreciate that relationship, that sort of like connection that you create with your character. And yeah, so I've struggled to let go, but I think that now's the time, and I feel ready. I'm very excited to see what you all think of her and what you all think of her journey and her story. I certainly will always cherish her and everything that she's taught me and how much she's made me grow up.